All right, for this pair deck, we are going to be going over photosynthesis and cellular respiration. I know the other classes we've done so far recently were on cell stuff and cell membrane stuff, but we're actually going to talk about the two main processes, and this is going to be the last chapter essentially we do before we start reviewing for our STAR test. I will be asking as you do this pair deck to go through and pause as I have you complete some sort of things and activities throughout. And if you need to ever rewind or rewatch parts of the video, definitely click back and like rewatch an explanation I make if you didn't get it the first time, or contact me if you are kind of unclear even after you watch something multiple times. So first thing is the do now. So I'm going to ask that you first look up, if you don't know them, or just define the following terms. And you're going to type those responses out in your pair deck. And the first term is going to be autotroph. The second term is going to be heterotroph. So go ahead and either define them or look them up if you're not sure and define them in your own words and pause in order to do so. The learning objective for today is that you're going to be able to basically map out the process and interactions of the photosynthesis that plants do and cellular respiration that all living things do, and see how they interact with each other and how energy kind of is exchanged and stored. So, like in the do now, autotrophs are organisms that can make their own food. So they're going to use either light or chemical energy. And another word for them that we commonly use is producers. Heterotrophs, on the other hand, obtain energy or get energy from eating other organisms. The other term we use for them is consumers. We, for example, fall under the category of consumers, and for example, like a dandelion or a tree fall under the category of producers. So quick check. You're going to write your response. An organism that must consume other organisms in order to gain energy for survival is known as a blank. And if you're not sure, rewind the video and watch the previous slide one more time. The answer is that an organism that must consume other organisms in order to gain energy for survival is known as a heterotroph or a consumer. So if you're either of those, you are correct. Photosynthesis is when autotrophs capture energy from the sun or sunlight energy to make sugar. Sugar is how we store the energy, as how plants store the energy so that they can access it, or so that or that we consume to access it. And plants will absorb visible light, and visible light actually has a spectrum. It looks like white light, but there's actually many, many colors, and all the colors combined together bounce off and react with, for example, our eyeballs and say that it's a white light. So white light is technically all colors of light, and anything that reflects as black means that it's reflecting no light. And that means everything from Roy G. Biv. We go all the way from violet to red. So from the ultraviolet rays all the way to the infrared rays, everything in between that is our color spectrum that we can see. So what does photosynthesis actually mean? Photo by itself means light. Maybe y'all will be like, well, photograph, we shorten as photo. And technically that's actually the wrong way to shorten photograph, because graph actually means image or picture. So if you wanted to shorten the word photograph, we shouldn't actually be saying like take my photo. We should be saying take my graph, which sounds really, really weird, because you can't take somebody's photo because that's light, right? Photo is light. So when you take a photograph, you're using light to capture an image. Synthesis is the process of putting things together. Therefore, when we put that all together, photosynthesis means you're going to be putting things together with light. And in this case, plants are putting sugars together with light. So photosynthesis is the process by which plants use solar energy or sunlight to convert water and carbon dioxide into sugar for use as an energy source. You can't really store sunlight energy, right? You can't put light into a box and open it to use later. That would be crazy if you could, but you can't. But if you turn that energy and store it inside of a sugar molecule, you can go and eat that sugar later. So where does photosynthesis happen? Photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplasts of plant cells. These little green discs inside of plant cells are called chloroplasts. Okay, they're little green discs, and we're going to explore what the inside of them are. So chloroplasts are an organelle inside of plant cells that are needed for photosynthesis. They have a double membrane, and there are two parts inside of them. Grana are the stacks of membrane enclosed compartments called thylakoids. So these actually look like pancake stacks. hence why I put the image down below, because I think it's really cute. So these little stacks just look like a nice stack of fluffy pancakes, and those are grana. Each one little disc, each one pancake is a thylakoid. Stroma is just the fluid inside of this little jelly bean of a chloroplast. All this inside isn't just empty air. It's got a fluid, kind of like how the cell is filled with cytoplasm. Chloroplasts are filled with stroma. Okay, you don't actually need to really know these details, but if you see a little jelly bean organelle inside of a cell and it's got pancake stacks inside of it, you should automatically know that that's a chloroplast. So pancakes are chloroplasts. Chlorophyll is a green pigment found inside of chloroplasts that allow them to absorb light energy. So if they look green to us, that means they can absorb every single light color except for green, because the green will bounce off of them and hit our eyeballs, which is why we see them as green. Okay, so any color that you see something means that it absorbs all light except that color, because that color is bouncing off and hitting your eyeballs. So something that's yellow in and of itself is not actually yellow. It just means that when light hits it, yellow bounces off of it and hits our eyeballs. So chlorophyll is green. And as you can see right here, the little chloroplast right here is green. And over here inside of the plants, it's green. And that's because of chlorophyll. And that's a pigment that is absorbing light energy. So for the equation, the reactants are on the left side and the products are on the right side. And we're going to talk about the equation for photosynthesis. So the first thing we need are 6 waters, or 6 H2Os. And the second thing we need are 6 carbon dioxides, or 6 CO2s. What is going to be produced are 6 oxygen molecules, which is 6 O2 molecules. Super, super nice, because we need that to breathe and survive. And then we're also going to be producing 1 glucose molecule, which is C6H12O6. Glucose is a sugar. That's where the energy is stored in. And the sunlight, obviously, is needed during the process, because that's where the energy is coming from. So again, H2O is water, we need 6 of them. CO2 is carbon dioxide, we need 6 of those. O2 is oxygen, we made 6 of those, not we. Sorry, I keep saying we. Plants made 6 of those, and then you're going to be 1 molecule of glucose made each time you go through this process 1 time. So I'm going to ask that you fill in the common names of the chemicals involved in photosynthesis. You can use a drawing tool if you want to, or I would highly suggest drawing text boxes. For example, where I drew the light energy text box right here, and type in the name of each of these reactants and of each of these products. So go ahead and pause and do that. Take a quick look across the diagram for a summary of what photosynthesis is. So as you pause, and go ahead and do that. So there are some factors that affect photosynthesis and affect how efficient it is, or if it's going to work at all. And that obviously has to do with the reactant side. So if you limit the amount of water, photosynthesis is either not going to occur or it's going to occur really slowly. So plants in a dry environment have a especially thick waxy cuticle or waxy layer on the leaves so that the water is not getting lost from the plant as easily. If you change the temperature that the plant is existing in, photosynthesis only really works between 0 and 35 degrees Celsius. So anything outside of that, it's not really going to work. Either the plant will completely die or just won't be able to do this process for itself. And the last thing is another reactant issue where if the light is not that intense, photosynthesis will be really, really slow and not efficient. But if there's really, really high light intensity and it's not, being too hot, then the photosynthesis process happens really, really fast because there's a lot of light intensity. So there's a lot of light energy being projected onto the plant. So you're going to fill out the summary of photosynthesis. What is the purpose of photosynthesis? Tell me in a short statement or a short sentence. Where does photosynthesis occur? What is the name of that thing that has pancake stacks inside of it? And then the last thing is you're going to write out the photosynthesis equation for me. You can type it or you can write it. It's up to you. So pause and go ahead and fill out this diagram. I'm going to be checking this for completion to see if you really got the information out. And if you're not sure, make sure you rewind and watch the earlier sections of this video because these are all explained. Okay, so energy. All cells require a continuous supply of energy in order to perform their daily activities. All cells. But energy is not useful unless it comes in a form that cells can use. So ATP is the major source of energy or the major currency of energy in the body, right? We use ATP, plants use ATP. And we even talked about it in the cell membrane and transport video where we talked about active transport. And ATP is used in active transport and just moving stuff in and out of your cells. Cellular respiration is the process that breaks down sugar to make energy for use by cells. So we can't directly use sugar as energy. But when you break down the sugar molecules that plants made, whether you ate it or the plants themselves are actually breaking down the sugar molecules, they can change that energy in the sugar bonds into ATP. And now it's useful. So where does respiration occur? Well, respiration occurs in the mitochondria of both plant and animal cells. So all living cells do respiration. Okay, it's not plants do photosynthesis and animals do respiration. No, plants do photosynthesis, but then everybody does cellular respiration. Gotta make that clear. So there's that like really old meme that says the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and it kind of is true. Okay, the mighty mitochondria is helping us break down sugar into ATP, and then we can use the ATP for any processes that require any energy in living. So the structure of the mitochondria is, again, a double membrane, kind of jelly bean shaped thing, but the membrane inside of it kind of remind me, I don't know, of like ramen where it's all wiggly. So if you saw pancakes, you thought, pancakes, green, chloroplast, photosynthesis. Here, mitochondria, you're going to see a jelly bean and you're going to see wiggly, squiggly lines inside of it, and it looks kind of like ramen, honestly. If you see squiggly lines inside of a jelly bean, it's going to be a mitochondria, and that's going to be our powerhouse of our cell. So our equation for cellular respiration is C6H12O6 plus 6O2 makes the products of 6H2O and 6CO2. Looks similar to the photosynthesis one, except it's completely reversed. And again, take into account, there's no light energy involved in this one. But you are producing ATP on the product side, which is the most important part. So again, C6H12O6 is sugar or glucose. O2 is oxygen. H2O is water. And CO2 is carbon dioxide. But the main star of the show is ATP that's being produced. So you can draw your text boxes to answer these questions. If you need to, you can also scroll the video back a little bit to rewatch the last slide. What are the reactants of cellular respiration? Hint, hint, on the left side. And then what are the products of cellular respiration? Hint, hint, on the right side. So go ahead and pause and answer these questions in your Pear Deck. Answers are, reactants are going to be glucose and oxygen on the left side. Right? You're using those up. And the products are going to be carbon dioxide and water. And then technically there's also the super important part of ATP, which is energy. Okay, those are the products. So cells use sugar and oxygen to make carbon dioxide and water, but oxygen is not actually necessary. It only makes the whole process a lot faster, and you can make a lot more ATP when you have oxygen. So there are two types of respiration. Aerobic is with oxygen, and anaerobic is without oxygen. And if you have ever gone on a run, you have experienced both. And I say this because I run and I experience both multiple times a week, and one of these is more painful than the other. So aerobic respiration, for example, is when you're fresh on a run and you're breathing well and your muscles are not tired at all and you're going at a good pace. The second you start feeling a little bit of lactic acid or a little bit tired, it's because your muscle cells are getting less oxygen. And so when they're not getting as much oxygen, they start doing anaerobic respiration. So they're making less ATP and they're also making acid. And when you get lactic acid, that's when you get sore. And the next day you feel kind of sour from your workout because you had acid in your muscles. It's partially you rebuilding the muscles, but it's also because during the process of doing anaerobic respiration, where your muscles were still working hard and using ATP and making ATP, but they weren't getting enough oxygen, they were creating acid at the same time. So you'll see like pro football players do ice baths because it helps you get rid of the acid in your muscles so you can recover faster. But I don't recommend ice baths. They're pretty terrible. So aerobic respiration, again, is with oxygen. So when you're breathing really, really well and you're doing your workout and your muscles aren't really getting tired at all. But the second you start feeling tired, it's because you're not getting as much oxygen to those cells that are using up the ATP. And so you're going to do anaerobic respiration. You're making a lot less ATP and you're making acid. So again, aerobic respiration is with oxygen, and you can produce a lot of ATP. It's the most efficient way to do this, and you're producing 36 or up to 38 ATP each time you do one time through the reaction of cellular respiration. So 6 water, 6 you're gonna have 6 oxygen and 1 glucose, and you're gonna go make 36 ATP. That's really efficient, right? This occurs in the mitochondria, but anaerobic respiration is when you're lacking oxygen. So when you don't have oxygen and that's crossed out of that pad, you still have glucose. You're gonna be doing respiration, and you can only actually make 2 ATP at a time. So instead of 36, you're trading off for 2. 2 is better than nothing, but it really is a struggle with just making 2 ATP at a time. And this actually doesn't even occur in the mitochondria. This occurs in the cytoplasm. Your mitochondria can't work without oxygen. So you're just doing this outside in the goopiness of your cell, and it is not a great job. But the reason we do it is because it's still better than nothing. And when you talk about the anaerobic respiration, there's actually 2 kinds of that too, another subset. So there's alcohol fermentation, which organisms like yeast do, right? To make beer, you give it wheat, something with gluten, and it will ferment it through anaerobic respiration, and you actually produce alcohol using the yeast. But we don't actually do that. We do the second one, which is lactic acid fermentation. And man, if you're an athlete, you've heard of lactic acid. That's that terrible feeling when you're tired and your muscles are sour. That's actually because there's literal acid in your muscles. Okay, so in summary of cellular respiration, I'm going to ask that you pause and fill out this graphic organizer. So I want you to tell me, what is the purpose of cellular respiration? What is the name of the organelle where cellular respiration occurs? And then lastly, write out the cellular respiration equation for me. So pause and go ahead and do that so you can get a nice summary on your Pear Deck of what cellular respiration is. In summary of this overall cycle of 2 processes, I'm going to ask that you also go through and fill this out now on your Pear Deck. So write out the equation for photosynthesis and cellular respiration so that you can see them side by side and compare what they're like, because you should see some similarities and some differences. Location, where are they happening? Which organelle is doing photosynthesis? Which organelle is doing cellular respiration? Inputs, reactants, what's on the left side of that equation? Output products, what's on that right side of that equation? What is the energy source? Where is it coming from? Is it coming from the sun, or is it coming from glucose? Which one is which? And then the result, is it the purpose of this process to store or release energy? Just circle 1 using the drawing tool. So go ahead and pause and fill this out. And I think the last thing I'm going to have you do is to use the word bank and fill out this graphic organizer. So as you can see, there's a sun, there's a plant, there's a chloroplast, there's an animal or a consumer, there's a heterotroph with its mitochondria, there's a star representing some kind of energy molecule that's going to be produced in a certain process. And you're going to fill the blanks in here. So what I highly suggest is that you draw text boxes on each of these little things, lines, and then you're going to type out the answer and use your drawing tool to cross these out to make sure that you've used all of them, because you will use all of them and you will not use any of them more than once. After you finish this, make sure that all of your stuff in your Pear Deck is finished as you go along with this video. You can always rewind and rewatch any parts, and you're going to go ahead and work on your interactive notebook section. If it's an A day, then you're going to be working on section 3, and if it's a B day, you're going to be working on section 1 of week 26. And after that, you have an exit ticket, and that will be it for today. Remember, this is the last day we're learning material for the first time. So after this, we're going to start reviewing for the STAR. And this stuff should be especially fresh in your mind because we just learned it. So hopefully it's a good review for middle school, and you kind of got some more deeper understanding of it.